There are moments in life when everything you believed to be true shatters in an instant. Not with a dramatic crash, but with a whisper, a conversation you were never meant to hear. A truth so dark it rewrites every memory you hold sacred. This is a story about technology meant to protect becoming the lens through which a woman discovered she was living with a stranger. A stranger who wore her husband's face, who kissed her goodbye each morning, who stood in their daughter's doorway planning something unthinkable. Some betrayals cut so deep they reach back through time, poisoning even your happiest memories. What would you do if you discovered that the person sleeping beside you each night had been slowly orchestrating your disappearance? Not just from their life, but from existence itself. This is not a tale of paranoia or misunderstanding. This is about a woman who learned, through the innocent blue glow of a baby monitor screen, that survival sometimes depends on believing the impossible. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marriage, at its core, is an act of faith. You wake up each day choosing to believe in someone, choosing to trust that the person across the breakfast table has your best interests woven into their own. For 7 years, a woman we'll call Sarah built her life on this foundation. A nurse working the overnight shift at a city hospital, a mother to a 3-year-old girl with dark curls and a laugh that could light up rooms, a wife to a man who seemed, on the surface, to be struggling with the same pressures most couples face. Money was tight. It had been for years. Her husband, we'll call him Marcus, had dreams of entrepreneurship that never quite materialized, business ventures that evaporated like morning mist. She carried the financial weight quietly, the way so many women do, working double shifts while he stayed home, supposedly building their future. She told herself this was partnership, that as time would come, that the distance growing between them was just the natural evolution of a marriage under stress. Their home was modest, but filled with the small evidences of a life built together. Photographs on walls, a child's drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets, the mundane machinery of domesticity, including a baby monitor with a streaming feature that recorded to the cloud. A purchase made 6 months earlier for peace of mind. Technology designed to let a working mother check on her sleeping child during lonely hospital breaks. Simple, innocent, unremarkable, until the night it became a window into something else entirely. The evening began like hundreds before it. Sarah moved through her routine with practiced efficiency, checking her daughter's room, adjusting blankets, lingering an extra moment to memorize the peaceful rise and fall of small shoulders breathing. These moments sustained her through 12-hour shifts. They were why she kept going. Marcus was in the living room, phone illuminated in the dim light, barely acknowledging her departure. This, too, had become routine. The slow erosion of attention, the comfortable neglect of long-term relationships. She drove through empty streets toward the hospital, that familiar weight settling into her chest, the weight of being needed everywhere and feeling valued nowhere. Her phone, clipped to the dashboard, lit up with its nightly notification. The baby monitor app, confirming the connection. She developed a habit of checking it before entering the hospital. One last glimpse of her daughter before stepping into 12 hours of other people's emergencies. She pulled into the parking structure, found her usual spot under the flickering fluorescent panel that had needed replacing for months. Opened the app expecting to see what she always saw. Her daughter's room, bathed in the soft amber glow of the night light, a small form peaceful beneath covers. But the screen showed something else, something that made her hands go cold. Marcus stood in their daughter's doorway, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a voice she recognized but had never heard quite this way before. Animated, alive, conspiratorial. The baby monitor's audio, designed to catch whispers and cries, caught every syllable with crystalline clarity. And what he was saying made the world narrow to a pinpoint of incomprehensible horror. He was discussing timing, windows of opportunity. The phrase, "after she leaves for work," repeated like a refrain. Another voice joined his, feminine, confident, intimate, and together they spoke about Sarah in the third person, as if she were already gone, as if she were a problem being efficiently solved. The conversation lasted only minutes, But within those minutes, Sarah heard her husband and an unknown woman discuss dosages, insurance policies, and timelines. They discussed making her death look natural. They laughed about how oblivious she'd been, how easy she'd made it. The clinical part of her brain, the part trained to respond to medical emergencies, took control. Her fingers moved across the phone screen with surprising steadiness, hitting the record function, saving the file to multiple locations. Documentation. Evidence. The fundamental principle of nursing. Write it down, timestamp it, make it irrefutable. Meanwhile, another part of her mind was screaming, spinning, trying to reconcile the man she'd married with a voice casually discussing which poison would be least detectable. The woman on the phone had a name. He called her Simone. She spoke with professional authority about pharmaceutical compounds and metabolic rates. She knew Sarah's work schedule down to the quarter hour, knew which mornings Sarah was too rushed to notice anything unusual in her coffee. The intimacy of this knowledge was its own violation. This woman had studied her, had mapped her routines the way predators study prey. If you're still watching, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you powerful stories every week. Marcus asked questions that revealed the depth of his planning. What about Sarah's sister, who would certainly ask questions? The response was chilling in its casualness. Let her ask. A grieving husband attracts sympathy, not suspicion. They discussed funeral arrangements, discussed waiting a respectful interval before revealing their relationship, discussed the insurance money and how they'd spend it, a trip overseas, a fresh start, their future built on the grave of Sarah's present. Through the monitor, Sarah watched Marcus adjust their daughter's blanket with gentle hands, the same hands that had held Sarah through difficult nights, the same hands that would, according to the plan being discussed, deliver poison in a morning coffee cup. The cognitive dissonance was paralyzing. This tender father, who tucked his daughter in with care, was the same man discussing maternal murder in the hallway just beyond the child's room. The conversation ended with expressions of love, promises to see each other soon, excitement about their plan finally coming to fruition. Finally, as if they'd been waiting, suffering through some extended trial. As if Sarah's continued existence had been an inconvenience they'd patiently endured until circumstances aligned for her removal. Sarah sat in her car, engine running, hands shaking, trying to process what survival looked like. She had perhaps hours before their plan initiated. She had a recording that seemed impossible, the kind of evidence people wouldn't believe without proof, because it was too perfectly villainous, too cinematically evil. But she also had training. Years of emergency response, the ability to act while emotions were still catching up. She dialed emergency services. Her voice, when she spoke, came out steadier than she felt. She identified herself, name, profession, location, stated facts without embellishment. Her husband had just discussed killing her with his mistress. She had audio evidence. She needed immediate intervention. And critically, urgently, her daughter was still in that house. What followed happened with surreal rapidity. The dispatcher's voice shifted from routine inquiry to mobilized urgency. Units were dispatched. Sarah forwarded the recording while remaining on the line, watching through multiple camera angles as her home, her sanctuary, became a crime scene. She'd installed cameras throughout the house months ago, another small purchase for security and convenience. Now they provided a multi-angle view of her husband's arrest. Police arrived in coordinated silence. 6 officers moving through darkness, approaching the home with the careful choreography of tactical operations. Through the living room camera, Sarah watched the front door breach, watched Marcus's expression transform from confusion to recognition of catastrophe. His phone, the instrument of his conspiracies, clattered to the floor, became evidence. His hands rose in surrender while officers shouted commands. Their daughter woke to chaos. The sound of her crying through the monitor was a knife to Sarah's heart. But she also watched an officer, a woman, thank everything, respond immediately, scooping the child up, wrapping her in familiar blankets, speaking in calm tones designed to minimize trauma. This officer, whose name Sarah would later learn, would become a fixture in their lives. A good stranger who appeared during the worst moment. Sarah drove home in a fugue state, obeying traffic laws on autopilot while her internal world collapsed and reformed. She'd left for work as one person, a tired wife, an overworked mother, a woman who believed she understood her life's basic architecture. She was returning as someone else entirely, a survivor of an attempted murder, a widow in all but legal technicality, a single mother whose child's father was being processed into custody. The detective waiting in her driveway was a woman named Elena Rodriguez, 50-something, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that had clearly witnessed humanity's full spectrum. She guided Sarah through the initial statement with professional gentleness, asking questions that built a timeline, established patterns, created a prosecutable case. But she also did something else. She listened when Sarah's voice cracked, waited when silence was needed, understood that trauma processing isn't linear. The full scope emerged gradually, each revelation more devastating than the last. Marcus had been transferring money from their joint account for over a year. Thousands of dollars Sarah assumed were funding his business ventures. Instead, they'd furnished a downtown apartment Sarah had never known existed, an entire life running parallel to theirs, complete with photographs on walls, comfortable furniture, the trappings of a primary relationship rather than an affair. The woman, Simone, wasn't difficult to locate. She was at that apartment when police arrived. 28 years old, licensed pharmacist. No prior criminal record, but a phone full of evidence, text messages detailing the plot, internet searches for undetectable poisons, calculations of lethal dosages based on Sarah's weight and health status. She'd been methodical, professional. She'd applied her pharmaceutical knowledge to murder with the same precision she presumably used for legitimate prescriptions. But the revelation that shattered Sarah completely came 3 days into the investigation. Detective Rodriguez, alongside a prosecutor, delivered news that turned suspected betrayal into confirmed horror. They'd been investigating Sarah's mother's death, a sudden stroke 6 months earlier, unexpected but not impossible for a woman in her late 50s. Except now, with the context of Marcus's current plot, medical examiners requested an exhumation. The toxicology report rewrote Sarah's understanding of her own history. Her mother hadn't died of natural causes. High levels of potassium chloride, a compound that induces cardiac arrest while mimicking natural heart failure. Her mother's last meal had been prepared by Marcus. He'd insisted on cooking her favorite dishes. He'd given her medication when she complained of feeling unwell. He'd been practicing, testing his method, confirming that he could kill someone in Sarah's proximity without detection. This meant Sarah had unknowingly been living with her mother's murderer for 6 months, had shared a bed with him, had let him hold their daughter with hands that had delivered poison to her own mother. The grief was unbearable, not just for the loss, but for the violation of those final months. Every memory of comforting Marcus through his apparent grief over her mother's death was now revealed as theater. He'd been mourning nothing, perhaps celebrating privately that his trial run succeeded. The legal proceedings stretched across months, each day bringing new revelations and old wounds reopened. Marcus's defense strategy was predictable. He claimed fabricated evidence, entrapment, a vindictive wife inventing conspiracies. But digital forensics don't lie. The phones revealed thousands of messages spanning 2 years, plans made and revised complaints about Sarah's personality, her appearance, her failure to notice their affair despite its brazenness. Simone's pregnancy became public during discovery. She'd been 4 months along, carrying Marcus's child while planning Sarah's death. The child would have been raised as Sarah's replacement's baby, a sibling for the daughter Sarah would have left behind. The calculations were ghoulish. They'd planned everything except the possibility that Sarah might hear them through technology they'd forgotten existed. The trial itself was exhausting. Sarah testified for hours, reliving the moment of discovery repeatedly for judge and jury. Marcus's attorney attempted to paint her as a neglectful wife, implying that her absence created the conditions for her husband's betrayal. The prosecutor shut this down efficiently, but the damage of hearing it spoken aloud lingered. Sarah learned that being a victim doesn't spare you from character assassination. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree murder of Sarah's mother, multiple counts of fraud. Marcus received life. Without parole, Simone received 30 years. The verdict should have brought relief, but Sarah felt only emptiness. Her mother was still dead. 7 years of marriage were revealed as partially fraudulent. Her daughter would grow up knowing her father was a murderer. Sarah made decisions that prioritized survival over sentiment. She sold their home, couldn't bear to live in rooms where her mother died, where murder had been casually discussed. She moved across the country with her daughter and sister, finding positions at a new hospital, enrolling her daughter in therapy, beginning the slow reconstruction of identity after trauma. The question she grappled with most was what she'd missed. What signs had been ignored, dismissed, explained away by exhaustion or trust. But eventually, through therapy and time, she arrived at a different understanding. It hadn't been her responsibility to catch Marcus being evil. It had been his responsibility to not be evil. The failure was entirely, completely his. Women are so often taught to accept blame for men's betrayals, as if love should come with psychic abilities to detect deception. Her daughter asks about her father sometimes. Age-appropriate honesty, the therapists advise. Daddy made very bad choices. Daddy hurt people. Daddy can't be with us anymore. The questions will evolve as the child grows. The answers will have to evolve too. But Sarah is determined that her daughter will learn this lesson. You can survive discovering that someone you loved never existed, that the person you built your life with was a performance, that your instincts, when finally trusted, can save you. Years pass. Sarah builds a new life that looks nothing like her old one, and that's intentional. She dates eventually another healthcare worker who understands trauma, who respects her need for transparency and patience. Her daughter thrives, shows no signs of following in her father's moral footsteps. Sarah's sister becomes co-parent and best friend, proof that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's choice and survival shared. The baby monitor that saved Sarah's life is long gone, replaced by a newer model, but she thinks about it sometimes. How a simple piece of technology, designed for a mundane purpose, became the difference between life and death. How random it seems. If she hadn't checked the app that particular night, if the audio quality had been poor, if Marcus had spoken more quietly. But perhaps it wasn't random. Perhaps the universe occasionally intervenes through unexpected channels. Sarah doesn't recommend her particular path to wisdom. The price was far too high. But she's learned something valuable about human resilience. That you can survive discovering the worst possible truth about someone you loved. That survival isn't just physical. It's rebuilding identity, reclaiming joy, learning to trust again despite having every reason not to. That strength isn't never breaking. It's continuing after you've shattered. She thinks about her mother often, the grandmother her daughter barely remembers. The injustice of her death will never fully resolve. But Sarah lives in a way that honors her mother's memory. She protects her daughter fiercely. She trusts her instincts now, even when they tell her uncomfortable things. Especially then. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments what part spoke to you the most. Have you ever had a moment when technology revealed a truth you weren't meant to see? Have you ever had to trust yourself when everything seemed impossible? Your stories matter. Your survival matters. And if you thought this one was powerful, wait till you hear the next story we're working on. Because sometimes the most extraordinary courage happens in the most ordinary moments, when people choose to believe what they see and act on what they know, even when it means their entire world has to end for a new one to begin. Remember this, your instincts exist for a reason. That uncomfortable feeling, that nagging doubt, that sense that something isn't right, those aren't paranoia. Sometimes they're your subconscious recognizing patterns your conscious mind doesn't want to accept. Trust yourself. Document what you discover. And know that survival sometimes looks like simply believing the evidence in front of you, even when every part of you wishes it weren't true. Stay safe. Stay strong. And never forget that you're more resilient than you imagine, braver than you feel, and worthy of a life built on truth rather than lies.